Hello, welcome back to NMI. In this video, we take a look at the repair of 5 Apple Lisa. Power supply issues, floppy drive issues, hard drive issues, and more. Before we dive into the repairs, let's take a look at a bit of the history behind the Lisa. It all started in 1978, the year of Saturday Night Fever, Superman, Halloween, Space Invaders, the first Laserdisc, Word Star, the first email spam, the year when Acorn was founded and Intel launched the Intel 8086. Apple was already very successful with the Apple II and in fact launched the Disk 2 floppy drive in that year. The company wanted to innovate on the design and started working on the next generation microcomputer, which would also focus on small office environments. That is when the Lisa project started. As the legend goes, as part of a deal with Xerox, in 1979, Steve Jobs and other engineers from Apple visited Xerox's park and got impressed by the demonstration of the Alto computer, a machine that combined high-resolution graphics with a multitasking GUI controlled by a mouse, and that could run office applications such as WYSIWYG word processors. None of that was available at scale on the personal computer market. The Lisa, which was named after Jobs' first daughter, was launched in 1983, and it is considered the first mass-produced personal computer to include a multitasking OS with a mouse-driven GUI. Other technical innovations of the Apple Lisa include Motorola 68K CPU running at 5 MHz, up to 2 MB of RAM, high-resolution monochrome CRT display, battery-backed RTC, possibly the first MMU on a personal computer, a fully modular architecture. All the system boards are built in a removable cage. RAM modules can be added or replaced. The power supply is also detachable, and so is the floppy drive cage. Like the Apple II, and unlike later Macintosh, the Lisa included 3 expansion slots. The first Lisa had 2 5 1/4 floppy disk drives, also known as Twiggy. The 2 floppy drives were replaced by one 3.5-inch floppy drive on the Lisa II. Another option was an external 5 or 10 MB profile hard drive that also later moved to the internal bay on the Lisa 210. Now I want to talk briefly about the Lisa's MMU. As mentioned before, it is probably the first form of MMU available on a personal computer. For those of you that don't know, MMU is an important building block required by modern OSs, as it allows full separation between the OS kernel and the applications, meaning that application code cannot modify kernel or other applications' memory. Modern MMUs also allow each application to see a virtually unlimited amount of RAM, thanks to virtual memory. On the Lisa, due to technical limitations on the 68000 design, the MMU could not swap memory on demand and had to preemptively swap memory between RAM and the profile drive before any memory access could happen. One important characteristic of the Lisa MMU is that it was a fully discrete design. While Motorola, the maker of the 68000, had a companion MMU IC, the 68451, it supported only 32 segments and was considerably slower when compared to Lisa's 4 contexts with 128 segments each. The MMU supports segments of up to 128 kilobytes and can map the 16 megabyte logical addresses into up to 2 megabytes physical memory. Looking at the schematic diagram and PCB, we can see that the MMU is implemented around 3 1K by 4-bit static RAMs, along with 3 4-bit full adders, plus a couple latches, decoders, and logic. Personally, I consider the MMU one of the most amazing features of the Lisa. Another interesting and unique feature of the Lisa is that each machine had a unique serial number programmed as part of its video state machine ROM. This serial number had two main uses: identifying the machine in a network and software protection, which basically married software to a specific machine. Now looking at the card cage, we can see that the backplane hosts two serial ports, a mouse port, a parallel port, a composite video output, and a reset button, along with the CPU connector, I/O connector, two memory connectors, and 3 expansion slots. The CPU card hosts the 68K or 68,000 CPU, MMU, ROMs, and support logic. The I/O card hosts the disk controller, keyboard controller, system controller, video circuitry, and also the infamous RTC with its NiCad battery that leaks and damages machines over time. We also have two memory cards, each one with 512 kilobytes of RAM. Now let's take a look at the machines. But first, we need to take care of the RIFA capacitors. On these 1.2 amp power supplies, we usually find at least 3 RIFAs that need to be replaced: C2, C3, and C4. These are metallized paper capacitors and are prone to failure over long periods of time because they crack and the paper absorbs moisture, leading to catastrophic failures and lots of smelly smoke. You want to replace C2 with an X2 capacitor and C3 and C4 with Y2 capacitors of the same capacitance and same or higher voltage. With the RIFAs removed on all 5 power supplies, I could now test the machines. Two of the power supplies presented this chirping noise and no power at all. On 2 machines, the floppy drives were continuously ejecting. Four of the machines had error 10726, which in this case is a possible issue with the internal profile hard drive. On 2 machines, there was battery leak damage, and on one of them, the I/O card connector even lost a pin due to corrosion. But fortunately, one of the machines had a widget hard drive that seemed to work. That is amazing! So I assembled one machine with the working parts, and now we are going to see the Lisa booting up from the internal widget drive. Pretty cool, isn't it? In order to fully test the machine, I need to fix the keyboard. These Keytronic keyboards use capacitive soft pads that dry out and lose their capacitive surface. Fortunately, I can make new ones at home, and I already used that method on my TRS-80 Model 2 and a compact portable. While the widget is working, I don't want to keep using it until it fails. So I decided to build some ESProfile emulators to replace the existing hard drives with images stored on micro SD cards. These emulators are based on the ESP32 and are very simple and easy to build. I recommend. Now, with everything working, let's boot up the Lisa. The Apple Lisa is a really amazing machine, isn't it? And this was just the first of 5. On the next video, we will proceed with fixing the power supply, floppy drives and more. Thanks for watching and see you on the next video. Bye!